Please.
Back in 2022, I covered the first 3 Trauma Center games, being Under the Knife, Second Opinion, and New Blood. And for those who haven't watched that video before, first of all, here's a link to that video and it'll be in the link in the description below. And second, here's a quick TLDR for my thoughts on each game. Under the Knife, unique, but god damn, this game is so hard. Second Opinion, way better than the original. New Blood might very well be the best game in the franchise. However, I can't say that just yet, as we have 2 more games to talk about. And unfortunately though, these 2 games are the last in the franchise, that being Under the Knife 2 and Trauma Team. But as you can see, we're only covering Under the Knife 2 today, so what the hell's going on? Originally, I was going to cover these 2 games together, however, a few things happened that made me change my mind. First of all, despite Under the Knife 2 not exactly being a long game, I had a lot to say about its story to the point in which it almost became the longest section of the video. Second of all, Trauma Team was a lot longer than I expected it to be. And finally, I'm not prepared to do another hour-long video. There's really nothing much else to say besides that I am hoping and praying that this Okami video doesn't become a behemoth. Because I can tell you right now that Trials and Tribulations, that bitch is gonna be a behemoth. It's gonna be a long one, no matter what I do, no matter how many rewrites I go through. It's gonna be a long one. So, to avoid that, I'm gonna be splitting this video up into 2. And today we're gonna be covering Under the Knife 2. Now, if things are, if things go according to plan, nothing too crazy happen, and life doesn't just throw me a curveball and stuff, I should have Trauma Team out, like the Trauma Team video out, within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Hopefully. And with that, it's time to cover Under the Knife 2. Under the Knife 2 released on the DS on July 1st, 2008. The game yet again focuses on Derek and Angie as they not only have to deal with the remains and eventual return of guilt, but also themselves in the cruel reality of being a doctor. This game was developed as a direct sequel to the first Under the Knife, as according to Daisuke Kanada, some users felt a sense of discomfort because even though they were sequels, they were being played on different hardware. Something that Tetsuya Nomura should have taken a hint of. If you know, you know. But for real, what Kanada said is something that could have rang true. While the gameplay of New Blood was still the same, not only was it on the Wii as opposed to the DS, it also focused on an entirely new cast of characters, and I can imagine that some people wanted to see Derek and Angie again, as well as play a new game on the DS as opposed to the Wii. But beyond that, I really wasn't able to find jack shit when it came down to the development history of this game. Okay, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that would be a lie, because I was able to find some stuff, but it's kind of like in this weird mix of being interesting and annoying as hell. Like, for one thing, the game wasn't even developed by Atlus, despite it being published by them, alongside having Masayuki Doi and Daisuke Kanada as the artists and one of the directors of the game respectfully. Everything else was developed by Vanguard, which was another pain in the ass, because searching them up either led me to some sketchy ass insurance company or an indie studio, and when I finally found them, I was still confused because it seems as if these guys were ghost developers like Tosei. But as I was doing my research for this video, I did end up coming across something interesting about the music in this game. So, come to find out, the music in this game was being streamed instead of being played natively on the console, which compared to most DS games was kind of a rarity. You see, most of the music in the DS were played natively, and as such, it was compressed to save on storage, and the result was having the music from these games sound like it came from a more souped up Game Boy Advance to compare it to something. For some technical magic that the game composers were using, they were able to stream the music, leading to the sound quality to be what it is. And compared to the first game, which straight up sounded like it could have been on the GBA, the sound quality for Under the Knife 2 sounds like it could have been on the Wii, or maybe the PSP. Regardless of comparisons though, it sounds so damn good, and major props to Manabu Namaki and Noriyuki Kamikura for doing this. Like always, I will be putting timestamps down below in the description so that you guys can avoid spoilers. But with that out the way, let's finally dig into this story, and also let's see what Derek and Angie have been up to since the events of the first game and what new dangers they are about to face. It's been 3 years since the events of the first game, and after having eradicated guilt, Derek and Angie have been going around the world finding new diseases in the hopes of being able to cure them, and their journey eventually leads into the fictional nation of Costa Guard that before had been ravaged by war, but is going through a sort of healing phase. But despite this period of peace, there's still problems that the people of the nation are facing, from guerrilla warfare, landmines, to fucking crocodiles. Don't underestimate them bitches, they could do some serious damage. Bitch! Fuck. When the story begins, not only are we reintroduced to Derek and Angie, we meet a new character named Adel? Adel? Adele? 1 second.
Adel.
Ooh. That's gonna be a bitch and a half to say. Adel is a new doctor who will begin to work under Derek and Angie throughout this first chapter, and for the most part he's pretty cool. He kind of has his androgynous look going on, and he's determined to be an exceptional doctor. Beyond that, there really isn't anything else to him until the second half of the game, and oh boy, that's gonna be some hell to go through. But Adel, of course, isn't the only character we get to chill with, as we're also introduced to Derek Stiles and Angie Thompson. We've gone through some small but noticeable changes. While Derek is mostly the same character we've met from the first game, he's a lot more experienced now, and in a way he's similar to Phoenix during the events of Justice for All. They've both completed the impossible and are now given a new sense of confidence that's inevitably gonna bite them in the ass. Alongside Derek is Angie, who is more tame than what she was in the first game. While she still puts Derek in his place and is not afraid to speak her mind, she now has moments where she holds her tongue until something really gets out of hand. Though, looking back in comparison, I kinda miss seeing her cuss people out at the slightest sound or hint of incompetence, and considering how things are gonna be going forward, it probably could have saved like half of the problems that her and Derek are gonna have to go through. But other than that, there aren't any new characters we will meet until the end of chapter 2. And that is a whole nother thing that we will be talking about later, so let's continue on. As the events of the first chapter goes on, we see Derek and Angie researching the mysterious disease that's been popping up around the nation. But while doing that, they've also been helping out the local military with treating refugees. And they got Derek and Angie doing the usual stuff, like getting rid of tumors, putting people's bones back together, and removing a bullet deep in someone's heart after an attack.
War is hell.
Eventually, we come across a child soldier, Jesus fucking Christ, that is something, who contracted that mysterious disease Derek and Angie were researching. And thanks to Derek's patented healing touch, he's able to save the child's life. But their celebration is cut short when Derek and Angie are called to come back to the US for something urgent. And with Adel joining along as an apprentice, the three head back to Caduceus where they learn that guilt is back. Kinda. While guilt has been eradicated, past victims are experiencing something known as post-guilt syndrome, or PGS for short, and they want all hands on deck to find a way to deal with it. But from here is where the story kinda feels like it's going all over the place. It's hard to talk about the structure of the story because it feels like this game is trying to do everything at once, if that makes sense. Until chapter 5, the game spends most of its time reintroducing old characters as well as introducing new ones, setting up certain character moments, and of course other things that's going to be important later on. Now this isn't even including the fact that PGS, which is being touted as a new threat in this game, isn't even the main threat, and we won't know what that true threat might be until the final chapter. All of this was an absolute pain in the ass to organize. But after spending 2 weeks trying to figure out how I was going to organize it, yes, it took me that long to do. Among other shit. I think I was able to find the best way to do it by going through things normally. or as normally as I can. Okay, long story short, we're going to be talking about the things that are more or less relevant. The first major thing to note is that towards the end of the second chapter, Caduceus gets a new patient named Emilio, who was one of the many kids that was being used as a test subject for Gil, known as Sinners. And alongside him is his nurse Heather Ross, one of the other new characters in the story who doesn't become relevant until the latter third of the story. Also, if you're wondering what happened to Otto, well, he is currently working under Tyler, despite the fact that the last chapter said I'm about to be working under Derek as an apprentice. During an operation to replace Emilio's failing liver, a mysterious pathogen pops up that ends up puzzling Derek, Angie, and Victor. Also, real quick, is that a fucking eye? Oh my god, I know we're at the worst of these Eldritch horrors. Jesus, I truly hope that we don't ever have to come across anything like this anymore. Even though the surgery would be a success, it leads to Derek and the others being absolutely puzzled about what they saw. And you would think this would lead to a major mystery of what this pathogen is, how it works, where did it come from? But nope, after this event, it doesn't get talked about until around the final chapter, which sucks because it could have very well been an interesting mystery that pushes the story even further. But for now, we're gonna have to wait, as with these next two chapters, we're about to see our boy Derek go through hell. Back in chapter 2, Derek performs surgery on the secretary for the Department of Health, and oddly enough, despite his accomplishments in the first game, which mind you were pretty fucking big, that operation leads to him becoming sought after, not just with the media, but also with Reina Mayuzumi, a representative of Acropolis Pharmaceuticals, and one out of the 3 main villains of the story. And yes, you heard me right, there's 3 antagonists that we gotta deal with.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
As the chapter goes on, Derek continues to get lost in the cloud, which eventually comes to a head when a guilt outbreak occurs, with Emilio and Heather being among the many people infected. Yet despite Derek doing all he can to save everyone using his healing touch, Emilio would end up dying. However, things only get worse for Derek, as not only does he have to confront Heather about Emilio's death, but he later has to perform an operation on Otto after he somehow contracted that disease from Kostagar. But during the operation, he loses his ability to use the healing touch, and with this and Emilio's death severely affecting him, Derek would temporarily leave Caduceus as he's unconfident in his ability to perform his job. Remember how I say this shit feels very similar to what Phoenix went through in Justice for All? Yeah. And the way they handle this hits even harder, as he ends up going all the way back to the basics. He ends up back at Hope Hospital, he's doing basic ass operations again, and they somehow, some way even managed to get Nurse Fulton, Derek's original assistant in the first game, to come back to help him. To say that this man fell would be an understatement. But eventually his skills are put to the test when Angie's father develops a tumor in his heart that progressively gets more and more aggressive. And instead of Derek pushing through to save his patient, he instead hangs up the towel so that someone else could do it. A stark difference from what we've usually seen from him. Of course, he would eventually gain the result to finish the surgery and regain his healing touch, but getting to the point of him regaining the confidence he once had was a little emotional, to say the least. It's not enough to make you want to cry, but if you've gone through something similar in any capacity, it's enough to make you feel for him. Now, even though Derek has managed to regain his healing touch as well as his confidence as a doctor, he's about to go through a series of events that's about to put him and Caduceus as a whole through the ringer. Despite everyone being happy to see Derek return to Caduceus, it ends up being short-lived when it's revealed that a new medical organization has shown up known as the Hands of Asclepius, or HOA for short. This organization is led by Patrick Mercer, who is the second antagonist of this story. And throughout this chapter, we see him quickly rise in power, taking talented doctors and putting them through training so that they could be on par or even better as the doctors from Caduceus. And among the doctors that left to join the HOA, it's revealed that Otto was one of them. And I have so much to say about this, but let's just move on because this shit is already getting long as is. While all of this is happening, it's revealed that Delphi, the terrorist organization responsible for the creation of Gil, is back and has even gone as far as to kidnap Reina. During a raid on one of their hideouts, it's revealed that she was affected with Gil, and despite Derek and Angie doing most of the work to save her, the HOA ends up getting the credit thanks to a serum developed by Acropolis for the HOA to use. And this leads to getting Congress, yes, you heard me right, to make a law allowing the HOA to recruit doctors from other hospitals to be trained for the war on guilt. With the HOA essentially replacing Caduceus as the premier hospital, everyone there begins to feel the effects, with most of the staff transferring and Caduceus itself beginning to run low on medical supplies. However, they end up getting some relief when Heather Ross, Emilio's nurse we met back in chapter 2, applies to work at Caduceus in order to help Derek and everyone else. And it came at the perfect time as Delphi unleashes guilt into the city and surrounding neighborhoods, leading to both Caduceus and the HOA heading over there to treat the victims. But while on the chase for two members of Delphi, one of them throws some fit in the air and uses the distraction to kidnap Derek and Angie. And after escaping from the police, the two come face to face with the last antagonist of this game, Heinrich von... You know what? Fuck it, we're just gonna call him Heinrich for now. And this man right here might honestly be one of the most... Actually, no, scratch that. This man is the most deranged motherfucker in this whole entire franchise. Not only did this motherfucker use his own children to incubate guilt, he also plans on using Angie to be the basis for a more powerful strain of guilt. Yeah, this nigga right here is even more crazy than Adam or that one other motherfucker from New Blood. I forgot his name, but you know what I'm talking about. Fortunately, Derek and Angie are rescued by the FBI, with the HOA coming in to get rid of the guilt using that serum from the last chapter. However, it causes Heinrich and his kid's guilt to become active, leading to Derek and Angie to have to operate on the three of them. With Heinrich and the rest of Delphi detained, the war on guilt is once again finally over. Is what I would say if there wasn't one more chapter to go over. So, remember that weird pathogen thing that we saw in Emilio's liver? Well, we end up seeing something similar to it when during a confidential operation, Derek and Angie come across a pathogen that was very similar to guilt. And after said operation, they learned from the patient that she ended up taking an enhancement drug that originated from Acropolis. And from here, a couple of very interesting things are revealed. During the meeting to talk about what occurred from that confidential operation, we learned that the enhancement drug that the patient took, as well as the serum that was developed to subdue guilt, is a derivative of the disease. And not only is it being used to essentially give doctors the ability to use the healing touch, it's also being given to highly influential people to treat various ailments to make them look younger. Alongside this, we learned that Angie's father, Kenneth Blackwell, who joined the HOA back in chapter 5, joined the organization as an informant to investigate how they've come to power so quickly. And from here, they dubbed this new variant of guilt Neo-Guilt. And finally, we learned that Patrick Mercer is Heather's stepfather and has something to do with everything going on. With evidence of their wrongdoing, the FBI, alongside Caduceus, conducts a raid on the HOA. During said raid, Derek and Angie confront Otto, who confesses to the fact that he resented Derek not only for his own lack of skill, but also for the betrayal he faced when he couldn't have saved them. And just as he's about to attack Derek, Otto collapses, leading to the two having to operate on him. Eventually, the FBI locates both Patrick and Reyna to a large plant that held the HOA's medical supplies. And during the raid on the plant is when we learn that the reason for the creation of Neo-Guilt is to save Heather's mother, who has been comatose since the events of the game. But Patrick here feeling like it was his duty to make that happen. Now, on one hand, I could sympathize with Patrick wanting to save the one he loves. I do, I really do. But on the other hand, this has to be one of the most psychotic shit one can do. And it's made even worse when his own stepdaughter accepted that her mother would be comatose for a while. Okay, you know what? Let's have a talk real quick, you know? I feel like we as a society should stop allowing these narcissists to be having, like, you know, all of this wealth, especially when something like this could possibly happen. And considering the way things are going right now, I would not be fucking surprised. Derek and Angie eventually save Heather's mother after Patrick injected her with a strain of Neo-Guilt. And when they confront him and Reyna, it's revealed that she is the host for the final strain of Neo-Guilt, Althea. And if she were to die, the culture drinks full of guilt will be unleashed. Yet despite this, Patrick injects Reyna with a stimulant that causes the strain inside her to be violent and rapidly increase her body's age to near death, causing Derek and Angie to have to operate on her and destroy Althea once and for all. Despite the operation being a success though, Patrick decides to say fuck it and is about to detonate the tanks until he's later shot and killed. With Patrick dead, Reyna arrested for her crimes, and the law favoring the HOA being repealed, Caduceus is once again seen as being responsible for preventing an epidemic. Meanwhile, we see that things have gone back to normal, with Blackwell working with Caduceus to deal with the remnants of guilt, Neo-Guilt, and PGS. Otto is back at Coast Guard and is dedicated more than ever to improve his skills as a surgeon, and we learn from Angie that Heather has been transferred to Caduceus East in order to look after her mom. And the game ends with Derek and Angie going off to a conference, with the two seemingly and awkwardly professing their love to one another. And that, ladies and gentlemen and non-binary peeps, is the story of Under the Knife 2. And I have such a mixed reaction to it. On one hand, I really like some of the stuff that they were going for here. Derek having to grapple with this newfound acclaim that eventually puts him on a small but meaningful journey to discover what it means to be a doctor, and the concept of neo-guilt and it being used to help people instead of harm them was also pretty interesting to see. On the other hand, this story did not do it for me. It wasn't necessarily bad, it was just meh. There were things that the story did well that I mentioned before, but there are things that was either handled poorly or could have been expanded further, and one of those things was how they handled Adel and Heather. Both of these characters are new to the series, and it felt like as if they were going to have a much bigger role in the story. Hell, they're even on the front cover of the game, goddammit. Now between these two, Heather is more or less underutilized. Despite being connected to one of the villains in the game, Patrick Mercer, she isn't really relevant until the 6th chapter. Even then, we only see her a couple of times and that's about it. Otto, on the other hand, was absolutely butchered. After the first chapter, he's pretty much sidelined for a good chunk of the game, and the only time that we really see him is when he's being trained by Tyler, something that in my opinion has been the most ass-backwards decision, especially since they were kind of setting up this mentor relationship with Derek. But then it gets worse when Otto decides to go to the HOA. Why, you may ask? Because apparently Otto resented Derek and his skills as a doctor, as well as being portrayed when he didn't operate on him. Now, I don't know if I'm interpreting this correctly or not, but I thought Otto had nothing but admiration for Derek. There's little to nothing shown that he resented Derek besides the fact that he couldn't finish the surgery. And if it was that, then it would make so much sense, especially if Otto was actually being taught by Derek. Instead, it comes off as having this delusional expectation that Derek could just do anything. And that would have been so much better than what this game was trying to do. But out of all of my interests in this game, the one thing I'm really peeved about was neo-guilt. Just like Heather's inclusion in this game, neo-guilt feels like an afterthought. I think the idea of a disease that derives from another for a more selfish desire is an idea that I feel is unique as hell. It's similar to stigma from New Blood, a disease made to help people, but it unfortunately did the opposite and was much more dangerous. That right there felt like it would have been a good way to up the stakes. You wanna know what is it? PGS. That shit and the return of guilt takes center stage, and I feel like guilt coming back was the devs' way of wanting to try to keep things familiar. But in my opinion, I would much rather have neo-guilt as the main threat of the game. Like maybe they could have done it where Emilio's operation would lead to Caduceus investigating it, and as the game continues on, the disease begins to pop up with more and more variants. Of course, it would have been very similar to New Blood, but in my opinion, it was extremely effective in that game. Or they could have done something like, kept the focus on PGS, but during the first outbreak, they come across a strain of neo-guilt that leads to Caduceus to investigate it further. Something like that, instead of showing it in the beginning and then immediately sidelining it until the very end of the story, would have been so much better. Again, I like what they were trying to do, but they could have done just so much more. To be honest, that's kind of the same case for the gameplay here. But I'm not mad at them for not adding anything new to the mix. But if you've played Second Opinion and New Blood, then you've basically experienced this whole game. And that's not a hyperbole either. Under the Knife 2, in every way, shape, and form, brings a lot of the gameplay improvements from those two games onto the DS. You have 3 difficulties that you can switch between at any time. Certain surgical tools are more streamlined, which is great for some of the more harder operations later on. And the healing tux works as a means to slow things down so that you can handle things that would otherwise be difficult. Unfortunately, it doesn't affect the vitals like it did in New Blood when you played as Valerie. I am really gonna miss that feature. Other than that, there's not much to say that's really different for this game, but there is, of course, the obvious return of guilt. As you can tell by now, guilt is back. Kinda. Compared to the first game, there are only 3 strands that we gotta deal with, being Kariaki, Tatarti, and Pimpti. For the most part, these 3 operate the same as they did before. However, they've been through some mutations that range from being not too bad to... Let's get this out the way first. In comparison to the 3 strands that returned and mutated, Tatarti is the easiest of the bunch. Its mutations are just new color variants. I'm being so dead serious. There is nothing else new besides that. Now for the other 2 strains, oh boy, Kariaki is the next strain that mutated, and Kariaki is one of the 2 strains that's a pain in the ass to deal with in this game. Well, it's still the same as before. Once you reach the queen, however, you have to go on the hunt for an egg she lays, and if you don't take that shit out first, it'll lead to these little bastards cutting the patient up like a paper mache. And this motherfucker was the reason why I switched the difficulty from normal to easy. Again, playing this and the first game on the emulator is literal hell to go through. Finally is Pimpti, who changes make the other 2 look like small fry. Instead of dealing with 1 core, now you gotta deal with 2 of them. And it wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't for the fact that you gotta deal with both of of them simultaneously, which I can only imagine would lead to someone going crazy, but that honor would actually have to go to the new threat in this game, Neo Guild, which again was underutilized. Despite being one of the new threats in the game, you only deal with them during the end of the second chapter and through most of the seventh, and overall there's 4 strains that you have to deal with. The first you come across and deal with once in the story is Noose. This strain is easy as hell to deal with, as you just have to remember the order in which these tumors pop up, drain them, then drain the main tumor and cut it. The second is Bythos, who is the only strain you deal with more than once. In a way, it's a mixture between Kurayaki and Paraskivi, just about the whole killing it quickly before it goes into the heart. I am so glad that this strain isn't here anymore. Now all you have to do with Bythos is shoot it in the eye with the laser and grab it when it breaks apart. However, that's easier said than done, as when it breaks apart, spores will fly around to stop you from taking the eye. And I only have one question to ask.
How the fuck is the patient still alive?
The third strain you face is Sige, and oh my god. So check this out, right? Sige works like how Kurayaki works in that you have to find it via the ultrasound. But once you cut it, it'll spray gas that will obscure your vision, and the only way to deal with that is blowing into the DS's microphone. Now, if you're playing on original hardware, then for the most part, it isn't that bad. Now, I don't have my DS. I currently don't know where it's at right now, but I do have my phone that we're going to use just, you know, as a, I guess, replacement, whatever, right? So imagine, this is the DS, right? Oh, okay, the game needs me to blow into the mic. That's it. But if you're playing on an emulator, you better pray to God that it has a feature that will allow you to blow into the mic for you, because if it doesn't, you might have to blow into your microphone just to register it. And I had to, and it wasn't fun. So, fun fact for you guys, I have asthma, and if you have asthma too, then you know good and damn well how bad it could be. I haven't had an asthma attack in over 2 freaking years, but recording for this video, or at least recording the gameplay for this video, I practically almost had one. I was huffing and puffing like the big bad wolf, and that shit was not fun at all. I literally thought I was about to get murked by blowing into a goddamn microphone. And after going through all of that, I'm just hoping and praying that the next video that I decide to do on the DS doesn't require me to play a game where I gotta breathe into the microphone. Fuck off, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off! Ugh! Finally, we have the final strain, Aldea, and...
Please be more careful.
Again, I ask,
How the fuck is the patient still alive?
okay, but for real though, this is one of my favorite final bosses in this series. It's essentially the combination of all the Guild and Neo Guild strains we've come across from this game. Major emphasis from this game, because if it was all of them from this game and the first, yeah, no, everybody is dying. While dealing with each strain of Guild and Neo Guild, you have to inject this black vial into the eye, and after doing it for a bit, the eye will reveal its blood vein, so you have to cut. Now, you gotta be careful not to cut the red one, which will pop up every now and then, because the vials will drop. Like drop. Afterwards, it just rinse and repeat, and like how most of the final bosses have been in the series, it will eventually reveal its veins again and then get souped up on crack. It was at that point you have to use the healing test to take it out once and for all. And if you were the poor set that used it early on, haha, you've practically earned that game over. So overall, how is Under the Knife 2? Let me preface this by saying that I have a lot of sentimental value for this game. It was the first game that I played that introduced me to Atlus and would later send me down a rabbit hole that to this day, I'm still stuck in. That being said though, this game is objectively just meh. If anything, it's more or less an underwhelming sequel with a lot of cool ideas that just weren't fleshed out. But despite all of this, it's one of my favorite games of all time. I still have memories of playing this game, listening to the soundtrack on my iPod on the way from school, and even researching half of the medical shit that they were talking about here. And fun fact for those who may or may not know, this song right here, this song is a staple for every YouTube poop video that has existed on this platform. Crazy, isn't it? Again, this sequel could have been so much better. This sequel could have been probably even amazing. If they would have focused on the stuff about Neo Guild, then honestly, I would be singing a different tune. But as is, it's just an okay sequel. And honestly, there's nothing really wrong with that. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching till the end of the video. Next time I see y'all, we're going to be covering the final game in the Trauma Center franchise, Trauma Team. easily one of the most ambitious games in the series. Like always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the little bell notification so you guys know when the next video is going to be coming out, and make sure to stay safe, be kind to one another during these tumultuous times, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!